Well, this is the quick adjust bracket. It's I think it'll work out. You know, we'll know more here in a little bit. It's gonna have to go out and run. It is to the dimensions on the website. Anybody that bumps into this on YouTube, you know, I would encourage you to go to the Razor forums and look at the documentation on the project. This video is built in support of that forum and the information out there. So, you know, stock bolt, we've talked before in the other videos and in the website about the offsets and milling them down just slightly here. You just grind them down with a bench grinder on each side, bring that shoulder down. Set that in. This, of course, is the left-hand thread heim joint. This is 100 millimeter now. It is not set. Again, my tire is not on, and it's just sitting on jack stands at this moment. So my A-arm is low. I've got this adjusted higher than what it should be, just for the purpose of the video. When I take it all apart, I will be returning this to a different length, Loctiting everything up, and blah, 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 and making it permanent. But that's a little bit more crowded. So you know, then obviously you want to spin your lock washers down, right? So you know, that's what that's all about. So standard geometry, standard mounting plate, no welding, you know, nothing's been cut off of anything. The only non-standard parts on here, obviously the Steinjager Midwest Control Products link now with the quick disconnect, and then this plate, and that's what this is all about. So you know, here we are, stiffer, about 20% stiffer than stock, and of course that center hole would be stock. I have no interest in that. I'm either going to want to be stiffer because I'm out, you know, banging on fire roads and want a stiffer sway arm, or I want more articulation rather than laying it down, which I certainly could do, and I guess we'll do that in just a second. My hope is by putting it to the 20% softer than stock that it meets my need for increased articulation without having to deal with well, let's just unhook this. So this has got to go down pretty far. You know, the question becomes, well, how do you affix this, right? This is the bugaboo for all quick disconnects, is what do you do? At least this one, rather than disconnecting from the bottom and trying to tie it to the top, at least this does allow me to set it here, and then I can bungee cord it, or I can Velcro it, or I can do whatever I'm going to do right there. I don't think it's necessary. I think simply connecting to the rear, you know, this is relative. This is stock. This is about somewhere between 20 and 25% stiffer. This is somewhere between 20 and 25%. I just haven't done the math. Softer. So I'm hoping that gives me enough additional articulation that it won't matter. So there you go. That's kind of it as far as tips for building it. This is a 1-inch muffler bracket I got from Fastenal, and just milled out slightly this shoulder, slightly with a Dremel, just ground it out a little bit. Of course, this is 3/16 plate. You've seen all that. There are 3 washers in here to space this out. You want a total width there of about 0.35 inch. That gets you so that this plate is flat. You don't want this to rock, right? Even though I haven't tightened this up, it's pretty firm. You don't want that to rock. You're trying to use this to keep it from ever rotating. You don't want this plate to rotate. This is the standard stud. You want that where you're going to be using the stiffer, stronger, and then of course this is the one. If you've seen the video, or if you've seen the documentation on the website, on the forum, this, as it ships from Midwest Control Products, doesn't fit. It's a 16 millimeter, whereas the standard for the control product for the quick disconnect is 12 millimeter, 14 millimeter. I think this is 16, and it needs to be 14, or else it's 14 to be 12. Bottom line is you've got to shave this down, and so this is the one that I've recontoured to the smaller size. Some of the washers on here aren't really necessary. I did that because this shoulder is a little weak. This one's pretty good, but this one was a little small. Again, just the inconsistencies in the two products there. But this also reinforces, this is only a 3/16 blade steel, right? So, and it's mild steel. So that provides not only a little bit of reinforcement for the shoulder, but it also keeps that from bending just a little bit. So, I don't know how important that is, but hey, dot one release of the project, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure there's a lot of other things to talk about, but I suppose one other thing I should say is it becomes obvious when you set this up, straight up and down, as this would be, that the standard position is tipped forward. And I don't know that you can see that, but that is not straight up and down. That would be straight up and down, right? So clearly the factory Polaris was not straight up and down, and so, well, okay then, that means that this length to this length is not consistent, right? Gotta hold this up right. So you can't just unhook from here and then go to here without changing that length. Let's change hands here. I'm right-handed. I can connect to this, just by dropping it down and setting it on. It will not connect to here. That's no big deal. All you're going to do is unhook, right? Set it down, go to the other side, unhook again, and then change the other side to whichever position you want. This bar, I'm rigid. I'm permanently connected to the other side still. So now it's loose, right? So then you would move this side. This sway arm will move up and down freely at that point. So you no longer need to worry about readjusting this. This is true of every a multi-position sway bar out there. They all have to be up slightly up or down relative to the fixed sway arm, right? The link length. So no difference in this project. But because I'm quick adjust, it does mean, again, simply unhook here, go to the other side, unhook, now connect it to, in this case, the softer side. That will change to the correct height, and then you just connect this one up, and boom, you're done. So yeah, and the same process reverses. And try to do this one-handed as a bear. There you go. And it's a pretty strong spring, but then that's what you want. Other things to talk about. Yeah, obviously I've got this tie wrap up here unhooked, but that's a reminder for me. I left it there to mention to you. Because, you don't want, and everything seems more severe in the video, or at least looking at it here on my iPhone, but you don't want too much offset in these heims. You'd like that to be as straight up and down as you can. So Polaris, for those of you that know this, Polaris builds this with these tabs already bent this way, bent in. I can't tell you why, but it is not straight up and down. I don't know how obvious that is. If you can see that, I don't know that you can, but in any event, there's quite a bit of angle there, and perhaps you can see just the angle of the heim trying to get it to come up. But you can also, when you build this bracket, you'll see that this is also tipped this way. Basically, what's happening is this sway arm is not as wide as a trailing arm for whatever reason. I can't begin to tell you why Polaris did it that way, but they did. That creates a number of interesting side effects, not the least of which these are, I think this might be radiator lines, and you just don't want to be nicking that with the back of these threads. And there isn't a lot of choice. You sort of have to have this muffler clamp projecting this way because you want this plate on that side of the sway bar so you can get easy access to these quick disconnects. You want them kind of facing out so you can get a good hand on them, and you can push them down, see what you're doing, So you have to make compromises, and that means that this plate needs to be on the other side. That implies then that this curvature has to be here. That puts the nuts on the other side. You're not out of clearance, but for this radiator between these nuts, but you do want to cut this a little bit shorter. I took a 1/2 inch off the threads, and just to make sure I had plenty of clearance between this is bars that goes up and down, and these radiator lines. And then, and that's why this is sitting here, because I wanted to make sure I reminded myself. And then I tie wrapped this outer line, which is flopping a little bit out. I tie wrapped it to this inner one, which is pretty stout. So I'll just clip that now. And then it'll be time to take all this apart and Loctite it up and put it together permanently. And you know, I don't know, is it done? It will be built and it will be ready to roll. So we'll just have to see how well it stands up, you know. Is the plate too thin? Assuming it all holds up, you know, the next thing that's going to happen is I'll lop this corner off. You know, this doesn't need to be this kind of ugly hunk of metal sitting there. It needs to be contoured. I'll either curve it or I'll quarter a section off, or I'll do something to make it a little bit more aesthetic. But, you know, that's Rev 2. And for right now, we need to see whether it's strong enough, whether this rotates. I don't honestly expect it to rotate around that, because, you know, you want this drawn up tight, right? So yeah, that's what that looks like. I'd put wider washers in there, and I may, in the next iteration of this, when I take it back apart, I will probably put wider washers in there just to give it more resistance to turning, because that's what it's all about. You don't want this to turn. If you can keep this from turning, it is very unlikely that this can rotate, right? It would require a bend in the bracket. So I think I will. Just looking at this, I'm going to put a much bigger washer in there. It's not, you're not trying to keep anything positioned. The nut's going to do that. It's all about space. So bigger washers. So yeah, I hope this helps explain the project. Again, this video is in support of, or driven to kind of explain post on razorforms.net, and that's where I would go for dimensions and more discussion of this. Meanwhile, you know, you want to build this yourself. It's cheap, right? This is, you know, somewhere between 75 and 80 bucks worth of parts. I guess that's a discussion for Steinjager and Midwest Control Products. And a chunk of plate steel. So a stock sway bar all of a sudden to a rigid link with Heims, quick disconnect and quick adjust. It's a good thing. Let's hope it works. Take care, y'all.